on the atom-cheek experiment at Laboratoire Charles Fabry. So this, I will present work which was done with my PhD students, so Max Schemer, Léa Dubois, who recently finished, and Guillaume Témez, who is still doing his thesis with me, and this is Léa. And Florence Nogret, engineer at Institut d'Optique, participated to the instrumental development. And everything was done in close collaboration with Jérôme. Jérôme was in Nancy and now he's in Strasbourg. Okay, so yes, it works. So I prepare a talk which is quite long. So we will see at the end. I would like to finish with some discussion about going from the quantum many-body system, I will discuss all along the seminar, to the framework of classical nonlinear physics. I think it's important in the framework of this conference, so maybe we will split the part number 5 here. Sorry, I forgot to. So let's begin with some theoretical concepts that are important to understand our work. So our work concerns one-dimensional Bose gases with contact-repulsive interaction, whose Hamiltonian is here. So it's the famous Liebling-Niger model that Jérôme discussed yesterday. So in general, when you have n atoms with such an Hamiltonian, the many-body eigenstates, they take the form of the so-called Bethe-ansatz. So the eigenstates for n atoms, they are labeled by n numbers whose units are velocities or momenta with h bar and m, which should be all different, and I call them theta 1, theta 2, etc., theta n, and they are called rapidities. So the wave function in the sector where the position of particle 1 is smaller than particle 2, etc., the wave function writes like this. It's a superposition where the sum here runs over all the permutation of the n numbers of plane waves here, where the wave vector for the particle number I is given by pi of I, the value of the permutation at index I. And you have here a phase factor. So here you recognize the generalization of the two-body wave functions that Jérôme wrote yesterday on the blackboard. Okay, now, and just the energy of this eigenstate is just given by the sum of the rapidities square. Okay, so now what are the quantization rules? What are the possible rapidities you can use? So for this, you take a finite size system, you confine the atom on a size big L, and you consider periodic boundary condition. In this case, you have n coupled equations for the rapidities that are labeled by numbers p, so P1 to Pn, where the P, they take their value in, they are integer or half integer multiplied by 2 pi divided by big L. So they take those moment wave vector, they are identical to the wave vector you would have for a free fermion gas in your system of size big L, with periodic in case where n is odd, or anti-periodic if n is even, boundary condition. So you have, so from the value of this momenta p, you can compute the rapidities. So you have a mapping one-to-one between the state of a gas of fermions, free fermions, which are with either periodic or anti-periodic boundary condition, and the state of your Liebling-Niger gas. But this mapping does not preserve the energy. Be careful. It preserves the total momentum, but not the energy. Only in the hardcore boson limit, it conserves the energy, and this is the limit Jérôme discussed yesterday. Okay. So now, what happens when you have a very large system? Then you have very, very, very many rapidities. So coarse graining with some resolution delta theta, you can construct a smooth function, pi of theta, where pi of theta delta theta counts the number of rapidities in the interval theta, theta plus delta theta. Okay, so this is the rapidity distribution. And now, if you look at the fermion momenta representation of your state in the interval theta, theta plus delta theta, the fermion momenta are given here in red, so they take value according to which are 2 pi over L times an integer or half integer. And in this interval in rapidity corresponds to an interval in the fermion momenta delta p. And what we call the state density, rho state at theta, is actually the maximum number of integer you have in this interval delta p, the maximum number of fermion momenta you could put. Okay, this is a functional of the rapidity distribution pi of theta. And we can construct now a quantity which take value between 0 and 1 and which is called occupation factor, which give the proportion of the fermion momenta that are actually occupied in this interval. Okay, so nu is nothing else than rho over a rho state. Where, excuse me, I forgot to introduce, from the rapidity distribution pi of theta, whose integral over theta gives the total atom number n, I can construct now intensive quantity by divided by the size of the system big L. Okay, now a crucial point is that the operator which counts the number of rapidities in an interval delta theta, q theta, is actually, so it's a conserved charge, it commutes with the Hamiltonian, obviously, but what is really important is that it's a so-called local conserved charge in the sense that you can write it as an integral over space, over dx, of an operator here whose extent is finite. And this has crucial, it's very important to describe now the systems after relaxation. So you have your many-body system in a box. You can prepare an initial state which is very peculiar. Let's say, for instance, all the particles on the right side, for instance. It has a given rapidity distribution. You can expand it on the basis of the Bethe-Ansatz state, and you will find a rapidity distribution pi of theta. It will be conserved under the dynamics. And after a very long time, the system will show relaxation phenomena, in the sense that when you look at local observable whose spatial expansion are small compared to the total system size, the mean value of the observable will tend to an asymptotic value, time independent. And so this is the notion of relaxation, which is still valid in this system. So after relaxation, the system will be statistically invariant by translation, and its local property will be completely characterized by the rapidity distribution pi of theta. And since it's only a notion which is useful to describe local quantity, more relevant than the extensive quantity pi of theta is the intensive counterpart, so rho of theta equal pi of theta divided by the size of the system. The rapidity distribution per unit length, but in the rest of the seminar I will forget the per unit length. So the stationary states, they are completely parameterized by this function rho of theta. And here you see this is peculiar because to describe stationary state you need a wall function. If you think of a system which is chaotic, a generic many-body system, usually to describe the state after relaxation, only a few numbers are sufficient. So typically, for a single species gas, only 2 numbers are sufficient to describe your system, the total atom number and the total energy in the system. So in fact, what is relevant is the intensive counterpart, the energy density and particle density. But here the system is integrable. So you have actually an infinite number of local conserved charge. So to describe your system after relaxation, you need an infinite number of numbers, which you cast as a function, rho of theta. And so to describe a subsystem, actually, so it's parameterized by rho of theta, but more specifically, the reduced density matrix of a subsystem will be actually the generalized Gibbs ensemble with as many Lagrange parameters as you have slices in theta, so you have an infinite number. So it's you collect all those Lagrange parameters via a function, which is a functional of rho. Okay. Now, some rapidity distribution. So first for the ground state of the system. So let's consider first the occupation factor that I introduced before, and the proportion of the beta fermion momenta that are occupied. But actually, you have the occupation factor which is 1 on a plateau like this, and then it's 0. So it's a Fermi-C. So in terms of the underlying fermionic system, it is just the ground state of your fermions. But now you can go from this occupation factor distribution to the rapidity distribution. And then this transformation depends on the value of the interaction parameter gamma that Jérôme introduced yesterday. So when gamma is very large compared to 1, this is a regime that Jérôme considers of hardcore bosons, then actually the beta fermions that are introduced are nothing else than the rapidities. So the rapidity distribution is also this Fermi-C. But in the case where gamma is very small compared to 1, but the rapidity distribution is quite different from this Fermi-C. It has the same support, but now instead of being a plateau, it's actually a semicircle like this. Okay, so that was for ground state. Now, from such ground state distribution, you can prepare excited state by deforming those distributions. And for instance, here in green, I show the rapidity distribution of a particular excited state, which is a thermal state. And you see, I compare, so it's in green, here's the rapidity distribution. So you see that compared to the ground state expectation, which is in yellow here, here, which is almost the semicircle, because indeed the gamma I choose is very small, but you have a small deformation. So here you have appearance of wings here. So you have to remind that from the rapidity distribution, you can get the particle density by integrated over theta. And I just want to emphasize the fact that the rapidity distribution is very different from the momentum distribution of the particles. And this, Jérôme already emphasized yesterday, showing that, for instance, in the ground state, the momentum distribution of the particle diverges around p equals 0 with an algebraic divergence. It's typically very thin compared to those distributions. Okay. But there is something else. Although the rapidity distribution is a priori very different from the momentum distribution of the particles, if you remove the confinement of your gas and you let it expand in presence of the interaction in 1D until distances are very large and particles no longer interact, then the momentum distribution of the particles during this expansion at the beginning of the expansion it will evolve in time, a priori, because of interaction. And after some time, atoms will no longer interact, so this momentum distribution will take some asymptotic value. And this asymptotic value of the momentum distribution is nothing else than the rapidity distribution of your system. And actually, not only the momentum distribution of the atoms become equal to the rapidity distribution, but if you wait long enough, the spatial distribution of the atoms itself becomes homothetic to the rapidity distribution, because the density profile of your system after a very long time become homothetic to its velocity distribution, which itself is equal to the rapidity distribution. So this gives you a very simple way to measure the rapidity distribution of your system. Okay, so now this was all for stationary system confined on some lengths. They were a translational invariant. But now what happens if you consider a system which depend on position, but which has only very long wavelength variation? So it varies on long wavelength, so it means also that it varies on very long time scale. So in this case, locally, you could think of considering a small slice of your system at around the position x, and then the system will looks like it's homogeneous. And because the time scale for evolution are very slow, you can consider that it has reached a stationary state locally. So to describe your system in your slice, but you can assume the system is in a stationary state, it's relaxed, and so it means that it is entirely characterized by its rapidity distribution. So the rapidity distribution, rho of theta at the position x. So now to describe the system as a whole, you just need to specify rho of theta and x, the two variable function that I draw here in cartoon way. So it's a continuous function, but I use xfig, so I do very basic stuff. This will describe entirely your system as long as it undergoes slow dynamics with very long wavelengths. So now if you consider the number of rapidities in a small slice of width delta theta, the number of rapidities here in the whole system is a conserved quantity. And it's a local conserved charge. It can be written as an integral over x of its value for each slice. So because it's globally conserved, it has to obey a continuity relation. Relating its local, the time derivative of its local value to the spatial derivative of some flux. And the flux itself now, because we have very long wavelengths evolution, the flux will depend only of the value of the rapidity distribution at the position x. So you have a whole, you have as many continuity relations as you have slices in theta. So you have an infinite amount of them. And when you let delta theta goes to very small value, this will give you a continuous, an equation for the continuous function rho of x and theta. And this gives you the so-called generalized hydrodynamic equation. We hear here the derivative over time of rho plus the derivative over x of the flux here of rho of theta at position x, that we actually write as rho times some quantity, which is a functional of the local rapidity distribution that we call the effective velocity. And here on the right-hand side, I didn't put 0 as it should. I add a source term, which would be the effect of an external potential. If you apply a force to your system at position x, what it does is that it will translate the rapidity distribution in the theta direction. So this is the effect of the external potential. So this equation is the so-called hydrodynamic equation. And the hard work now, beside all this conceptual development, was really to compute this effective velocity, which is a functional of the rapidity distribution at position x. And this was done simultaneously by several colleagues, so two papers which were really at the origin of GHD here. And they found this relation. And this relation has actually a quite simple hand-waving interpretation in terms of two-body collision because here you recognize the shift associated to each collision that Jérôme presented yesterday, but I don't want to go more in this direction. Because it's a hand-waving argument which does not convey, in my point of view, the good picture, because you have to remember that the rapidity distribution at position x a priori is very different from the momentum distribution of your particles. Now, I just would like to tell you that in terms of the occupation factor, so you can represent your system either by rho or equivalently by the occupation factor distribution. And in terms of the occupation factor, it turns out that the hydrodynamic equation takes this form here, where Vf is before the position derivative. So it's a convective form. So, sorry, this should be nu. So in terms of nu, it has a convective form. So nu is conserved along trajectories, if you wish. Okay. So now, but actually, all this theory was tested in a convincing way. I hope you will agree, using a cold atom experiment. So in cold atom experiment, indeed, we can realize confinement with very strong confinement in the transverse plane, so that using atoms whose typical energy is much slower than the energy between the transverse ground state and the first transverse excited state. The transverse degree of freedom, they are frozen, and the dynamics is one-dimensional. So you have different means to realize such strong transverse confinement. So one solution is to use magnetic confinement, and it is a solution I use in my experiment, so I will explain in a little bit more detail. So I use rubidium atoms, the simplest atom to cool. It's an alkaline with a spin, which is a spin of the electron. So it has some magnetic moment that you can use to make them interact in a magnetic field and confine them with magnetic field. To make the magnetic field in my experiment, I use actually current running through small wires which are deposited on a substrate, the so-called atom chip. So, for instance, using 3 parallel wires running current like this, we can show actually that the magnetic field is minimum along a line parallel to the wires. So I will actually confine the atoms along this line. So I will guide my atoms along those wires. So I can make a very long one-dimensional guide for my atoms. I can reach strong confinement because I am very close, a few micrometers away from small wires themselves. They are a few micrometers. And so I can have strong magnetic gradient. So a priori, I can have a strong magnetic confinement. Now, for the longitudinal confinement, I use additional wires, which are far away from the cloud. So I use actually 4 wires. So with these 4 wires, I can actually control the first term of the Taylor expansion of the potential, longitudinal potential. So I can make smooth longitudinal potential, which are either harmonic, but working well. I can also do quartic potential or double well potential. And the chip itself is actually realized in collaboration with Sophie Bouchoul, my sister, working at Laboratoire C2N now. Okay, so this chip is placed in a vacuum setup at 45 degrees facing down. And we actually make absorption images of our cloud with such an imaging system using an objective with a reasonable numerical aperture, close to 0.4. So this is a typical absorption image. You see actually two clouds because the chip is covered with a mirror. It sits only a few micrometers away from the mirror, and you see the cloud and its reflection in the mirror. So the longitudinal confinement of my cloud are very smooth. So locally, I can consider that my system is almost homogeneous. So this is the same approximation that the one is used in GHD, but okay, historically for a cloud at equilibrium we call it local density approximation, but it is nothing else than the hydrodynamic approximation. And in the case the system is described by a thermal equilibrium state, which is one particular stationary state. Then it will be described by a temperature, which is the same all over the cloud, and a chemical potential whose x dependence is the following. So mu of x is mu of 0 minus v of x. Okay. So now this is more quantitatively typical linear density profile I get from the analysis of my absorption images in yellow. And in gray here you have the expected shape of a cloud that would be at 0 temperature in the ground state in my trap. So okay, you see that we are quite close to this. So okay, entropy effect in the system are not very strong. And now what is funny is that actually the shape of the cloud is well captured by the shape expected for a cloud at thermal equilibrium. Indeed, we can assume thermal equilibrium and then fit the temperature and chemical potential, and we find the profile which is in dashed line here, and it reproduces quite well our linear density profile of clouds we prepare by evaporation in our traps. So Jérôme already mentioned that clouds at thermal equilibrium, so homogeneous, I go back to the homogeneous Lieb-Liniger model at finite temperature. So it will be parameterized by the dimensionless parameter gamma that you already know, proportional to J over N, linear density, and a dimensionless parameter small t, which is the temperature divided by J square. And in this phase diagram, you can see different regimes that Jérôme already discussed. They are separated by smooth crossover. And typically, the clouds we use in my experiment, they lie in the so-called quasi-condensate regime here. So, okay. Now there is other means to prepare one-dimensional gases in the cold atom community. Actually, the most used situation is to use actually dipole force. Okay, so I will go. And actually, I just mentioned that colleagues, they use other means, and I will present some results obtained using an ensemble of one-dimensional gases prepared in optical lattices. Okay, so now GHG was tested experimentally. So we were the first to make the test, and I will briefly show what we did. We prepare a cloud, a double peak cloud like this at equilibrium in a double well potential. Okay, this is the blue curve, linear density profile. And then we just remove the longitudinal potential and we let evolve the cloud. So in the 1D guide, and the evolution of the density profile is recorded, and you can see the curves here. And those curves, they agree very well with the prediction from GHD. So this is very nice because actually only GHD is capable of capturing the good behavior. If, for instance, you would insist on describing the system locally at any time by a thermal equilibrium, then you would have what we call conventional hydrodynamic, and then it would fail completely to reproduce our data. For instance, here in dashed line is a prediction from conventional hydrodynamics. You have strong density gradient, and in fact, you will even have a shock appearing at later times. And the reason, if you look at the GHG prediction for the evolution of the rapidity distribution rho of x and theta, initially it looks like this, and at this time here, it looks actually like this. So basically, the positive rapidity, they went to the right, the negative to the left, and you have something like this. And if you look here in the middle, you have actually a double peak rapidity distribution. And this distribution, obviously, is very non-thermal. So it's normal that conventional hydrodynamic will fail completely. So now, in my experiment, I tested GHG using measurement of density profile, which is nothing else than actually, oh, there should be an equal here, the integral of the rapidity distribution over theta. But now we can do another kind of measurement. We can measure the rapidity distribution. And for this, one can just remove the longitudinal confinement, let expand the cloud in 1D until the momentum distribution, the momentum distribution has converged towards the rapidity distribution. And then one measures the momentum distribution. So this is done by my colleague David Weiss in the US. And in this case, the out of equilibrium dynamics they consider is the dynamics after a strong increase of the longitudinal confinement. So they saw a huge breathing of the cloud, and the evolution of the total rapidity distribution was well captured by GHD. So in those two experiments, my experiment and David Weiss experiment, only integrated quantity were considered. In my experiment, I was considering the integral over theta of the rapidity distribution rho of x theta, while David Weiss was looking at its integral over x. So, but really, the quantity which is at the heart of the GHG description is rho of x and theta. So it would be very nice to measure it. So for this, you can think of a very simple procedure. If you want to measure the rapidity distribution at position x naught, you should just select a small slice around x naught. So remove atoms which are not in this slice. Then the selected atom, you let them expand in 1D until their momentum distribution has converged towards the rapidity distribution. In fact, you can wait until the density profile after expansion of your slice has converged also towards its rapidity distribution. So this is what we implemented with Léa Dubois. And to make the selection, so we want to remove all atoms which are not in a small slice here around x naught. What we do is that we illuminate those atoms with a resonant light, and after a few absorption-emission cycles, the atoms have enough energy to leave the trap. And that's how we select a small slice. And then we remove any confinement, longitudinal confinement, and we keep the transverse one. We let this slice expand until the profile has converged towards the rapidity distribution. And now we can do this for different position of the slice, and we can reconstruct actually the rapidity distribution rho of x and theta of our gas. Here I compare the experimental data to what we expect for our cloud. And we have a quite good agreement, so we are happy. So in fact, if we want to be very precise, we should check whether indeed we reach the asymptotic regime. In fact, for those data, it's not perfect. So if you really want to make precise measurement of the rapidity distribution, you have actually to take into account the dynamic of expansion. But I don't have time to go more. I just want to say that we use this technique now to investigate out of equilibrium dynamics. So for this, we reproduce something we did with Max Schemer, the experiment I showed you before, but this time to prepare the initial state with two density peaks, we actually use the selection beam because it was simpler. So we prepare a cloud at equilibrium in a harmonic potential. You have the linear density profile in blue. And then we used our selection method to make a hole, to drill a hole here. So then the density profile we have is here, it has a hole. And then we remove the longitudinal confinement and let the system evolve. So after some time, we expect, so we have the density profile in green here, so some atoms now populate the middle part. And if you look at the GHG prediction, in the middle part, you expect some rapidity distribution, which is actually double-peaked. And we probed this by now selecting the middle slice after the expansion, so removing all other atoms, letting this line expand, and what we get in green, so is what we have, and it's in very good agreement with the expected rapidity distribution of this slice, as you can see. So we are quite happy. So now I have. Okay, because I want to keep some time for the last part, but I will still spend 2 minutes here. Okay, yes, so I do have a little time. So now I want to say, oh, sorry. To speak about another out of equilibrium protocol that we investigated on my experiment with Léa and Guillaume and Jérôme, which is the so-called bipartite protocol, which is a protocol where you consider that you have two semi-infinite systems in stationary state, but different stationary state of Lieb-Liniger. And at t equals 0, you remove the barrier, which was located at x equals 0, between the two semi-infinite systems. And then you look at how those systems they will merge. So you would look at what happens in the merging zone. And this protocol was really the protocol that was considered to develop actually the GHG theory. So in the historical papers that were developing the GHG, they use this protocol as a model. And here we realize this protocol in a particular case, simple case, where actually we prepare the system in a stationary state of Lieb-Liniger on one side and in vacuum on the other side. And then we will look at the deformation of the border versus time when we let evolve the system. Okay, and to understand what happens, now it's nice not to consider the rapidity distribution, but instead the occupation factor distribution, whose time evolution equation is given here and has the convective form I already showed you. So occupation factor is conserved along trajectories. So what you expect after some time of deformation of your border is that the occupation factor distribution, nu of theta of x and theta, should look like this. And so here in red is nu not the occupation factor distribution you have in the left part of your cloud. And if you look within the border here at the occupation factor distribution you have, but it is actually equal to nu naught until some value, theta star, above which it is 0. And theta star is such that the effective velocity at theta star for this occupation factor distribution nu star is x over t, where x is the position at which you look and t the evolution time at which you look. So the occupation factor distribution will be only a function of the rapidity theta and x over t. This is particular to the ballistic nature of this aerodynamic equation. So why people were really interested in this kind of protocol is that because if you look at a new star, so on one side it has a smooth behavior that comes from new knot, but on the other side, on this side here, it has this discontinuity, boom, very sharp. And this resembles the occupation factor distribution you have in the ground state. Huh? Because I recall you that in the ground state, the occupation factor distribution is a Fermi sea with sharp border. So this will permit you a priori, as was indicated in some theory paper, to investigate properties of zero temperature liquid with algebraic behavior of some correlation function and so on. So this is very interesting. Okay, so now in our case, to investigate this protocol, we cannot prepare a semi-infinite system, but we try to prepare a system which is homogeneous over a large distance. So what we did is that we prepare a cloud at equilibrium in a quartic potential. So you can see that over a quite large zone, I have something which is almost homogeneous. Then we use our selection method to cut abruptly the cloud and remove everything that is on the left. So we start from this. And then we wait for some time, for some evolution time, and we record the linear density profile. So here I plotted different linear density profile taken at different evolution time, and I rescale the x-axis with the evolution time. So I plot it versus x over tau. And we see that the curves, they collapse as expected according to GHD. So this indicates that the dynamic indeed is well captured by the hydrodynamic GHD prediction. And actually we can do more. We can really compare the border profile we have with what we expect for a cloud whose state initially here on the right is the ground state. So because we are in the regime gamma very small, actually it has it is an arc of parabola, which is what you expect for quasi-BC regime. And it is shown here in black, and you see that the data are not far from it, although it's different here, it has more wings. So this is due to finite entropy effect. But now what we did is that we try to measure the rapidity distribution within the border to see this sharp effect. So for this, we selected a slice within the border, and then we let this slice expand. And we record the linear density profile after expansion. So here, on the left are theory curve. In black, it is really rho of theta at the central part of the slice, according to theory. So it has the sharp behavior I was mentioning. When you take into account the fact that the slice is not very thin compared to the width of the border, but it broadens a bit the stuff, it gives a brown curve, okay? And then when you take into account the fact that our expansion time is not really long enough to be really in the asymptotic limit, but you find the red curve here, which is also less sharp, but still it's very asymmetric distribution. And we compare this prediction to our density profile, and we see that, okay, it's not perfect. So here, on the sharp side, we do observe some wings whose nature are not elucidated yet. But still, this profile show the asymmetry we were expecting. So now I want to go to some things that might interest you more, which is the link toward the classical field. So when you let the atomic density goes to infinity at Jn constant, so effect of quantization of atoms, discrete nature of your model will become negligible. And you will be able, in fact, to replace the quantum operator, annihilation operator, and creation operator with just a classical field. So this is the classical field limit. And the classical field evolved now according to the nonlinear Schrödinger equation, which I show here. which, by the way, is also an integrable classical field theory model. So within this classical field model, the notion of rapidity distribution is still a quantity which is meaningful. Because if you define the rapidity distribution, which you can do, as the asymptotic density profile after a very large expansion, this has a meaning in classical field. You could imagine you have your field here, which expand over L naught, and you let it expand over very large distance, and you look at its distribution after this expansion. So you can define the rapidity distribution for your classical field. By the way, in fact, you don't have, knowing the initial field psi at time t equals 0 versus x, you don't have to numerically evolve it to see what is the density distribution after long expansion. In fact, you can use the machinery of inverse scattering to directly compute this quantity. So now you have this quantity. So now you can take calculation which were made for the Liebling-Niger gas after relaxation, which express a local quantity in terms of this rapidity distribution. And you, for instance, what was computed was all the momenta of psi dagger psi to the power n for any n at a given position x. After relaxation, this was computed as a functional of rho. Equivalently, if you know this, you also know the probability that psi dagger psi, the mean value of psi dagger psi, the psi dagger psi, the density at some position x is equal to some value, the probability distribution function of density. Okay, so now you can translate those results to the limit, classical limit, where j goes to 0 at finite jn. So you just have to take care. Typically, what enters a lot in the calculation with Bethe-Ansatz is this Lorentzian that you have already seen with the scattering shift. And so this Lorentzian will give something like this. So it's a bit complicated, but you can take formally the small j limit of the expression you develop for a quantum system and do prediction for the classical system after relaxation. And this was tested recently by a colleague, Pierre Suret, and his team at Lille in Flamme. So what they did is that they used propagation in an optical fiber, which is nonlinear, and whose propagation fulfilled a nonlinear Schrödinger equation. Just you have to remember that in this mapping, in this actually the position, so the fiber length plays a role of time, while time at a given position in the fiber, when you look at the electric field versus time, this would correspond to x. So at the entrance here, they put some field, which is actually here just a superposition of incoherent, superposition of plane waves. And you can measure this field. So you know psi at time t equals 0 in my language of NLS. And then this field enters the fiber, and under the nonlinearities, it will show a complicated time evolution. But after some time, so for long enough fiber, you know that you should have reached the stationary state. So statistically, the field, the system will become invariant by translation and by time. And in this relaxed state, all the statistical property of the field will be parameterized by its rapidity distribution. And the rapidity distribution, you can compute it, knowing the initial field that you put at the entrance. And now you use the formula derived with the Liebling-Niger model and adapt it to the small j limit to predict a statistical property. So here what you look at the probability distribution for the field intensity at a given position, so given time here. And indeed, experimental data here in blue point agree very well with the prediction using all the theory I explained to you. Okay, so now I'm finished. So there is many direction we could still work on. I think it would be nice to go beyond the GHG equation I show you, which are ballistic and which is due. This is the so-called Euler scale. It will be valid when length scale of evolution are very long, but in fact, if things happen on shorter scale, you might see some other terms which will involve higher order position derivation, so terms which looks like Navier-Stokes term. Then I said nothing about the relaxation phenomena itself. Everything that I was discussing assume locally the system has relaxed. But what is the time scale for relaxation? What is the mechanism of relaxation? I think this is it deserves investigation. And now to continue making bridge between the classical field and the Liebling-Lininger field and the understanding under Bethe and that and so on, I think this also deserves more investigation. Okay, with this I thank you.